I had to dump the trash. So this is sort of just a continuation of just off the cuff stuff, just sharing, or reflections, particularly on things that I experienced earlier today, or because I monitor both sides of the spectrum, as they say, both sides of the magnet, being a polarity integrator, and seeing how everyone's doing. Basically, what it is, monitoring and routing traffic, the ecospheres. And so I was particularly interested. So it's not a coincidence that these little channels all of a sudden come to my attention because I'm supposed to watch it for some reason. And I'll know when I experience it, whether or not I am or not. Okay, because obviously this AI puts up a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to use my mind's energy to experience all of it once. Right? Even though you can understand how that works. Right? Routing as a multiversal hub server, right? Routing traffic, lines of communication, routing bits and bytes of visual information, mathematical, geometric information, right? Through a multiversal hub server, that kind of stuff. And being tech support for folks that build systems that fall apart, which is really what it is. Okay, and so when I thought about this, having the conversation with Nathan, it's like, how did you know these things at such a young age? So I would share with him, and I'd say, pretty easy. My dad was actually a very brilliant mathematician and geometrical concept design engineer. My dad was a senior design engineer. My father's mind, the way that it worked, because he was so creative, is that you could plant any idea in my dad's head and he would build it for you. Whatever it is. He would come up with a working design that would work better, usually, than anybody else that came up with a mousetrap. So now we're back to coming up with a better mousetrap. Now we're into genetic engineering. Right? Remember what the Nazis wanted to do? Superintelligence. Ooh, we got AI on our side. That would be your super soldier stuff, right? Superhuman intelligence, bionic man. Remember that little show they had on back in the, what was that, late 1970s, early 80s with the guy that played on Bonanza? Wasn't he in Bonanza? I can't remember the guy's name. I think he was like one of the younger guy, no, I forget what program, I think it was Bonanza. I could be wrong. I don't remember. Some of these characters, they're character maps based on musical notes of mathematics that are generated holographic projection images that we see in our mirror, right? And so the point of that with Nathan, sharing with Nathan about all that, is that you can realize that their systems design engineer is all messed up. They don't build things to last because that's not how their mind is put together. They're formations of consciousness, which is a network, because that's what a corporate network is. Those units of consciousness that are connected to each other, okay, are connected to each other on a network on a motherboard. So they're running operating systems on a motherboard. And they're connected to each other by communications, right? And so you can see what they do with their energy every day by the use of what they use their energy to run as an APIN system, an application program interface. So they're running program realities. So you realize that the reality that they construct is meant to self-destruct. And so you don't need to be a genius to figure that out. Okay? So when you're able to read and map the system design, which is the architecture of what they put together, which is the B system, you already know it's broken. It's not going to work. That's why they come back to us, because we know how things work. We know how God's math works. God's math and physics. And that's why they hate us. See, so now you understand how this works when you think of engineering something, reverse engineering something, and reconstructing something that's already been built. in order to suit their self-interest. Because that's what they do. That would be similar to, we built it first. Okay, you don't like the way it works because it doesn't suit you. Because you still want to control things. You don't like the idea of not having any control out of what? Lack of trust. In God we trust. Now we're into trauma and how that plays into that on every level of energetic synthesis. So you can throw in that reproductive stuff, sexual energy, mental energy, emotional energy, spiritual energy, creation energy, intelligence energy, how it all works as a formation of consciousness that uses that consciousness as a network with other network units of energy, like nodes, little nodes. Hey, a node on a network, right? You know what a node is on a board, right? And so when you're a child, you can imagine how this is now if you want to throw a calendar at me and say, well, you're 71 years of age, right? But I've never left home. I'm still right at the center point of that eternal star with eternal spirit of fire. I have never left. I'm still there just as if I was going back to 1955 and I'm picturing myself right in that lot where I was at, looking up in the sky and going, I don't think I want to do this. Coming into a fallen system, a broken system. And so you can imagine after all these years, it's particularly when you start adding up everything that's wrong. Now, the reason that I'm doing this sort of in a way is to apply this to the California Inside, which I believe is a part of another larger family or another name that is associated with it called Epoch Times. Right? And so you have this gentleman who comes on there and does interviews of people, much like the way that Basis Project was interviewing all the whistleblowers, folks that were coming out of the intelligence agencies, the military, the political system. Systems. We're back into systems design. Right? They use their energy in which to perform task modalities with their energy. Right? So what did you do with your energy? Right? Okay, well, this is what I did. So they're going to report on or communicate as a speakerphone, a microphone, right? And a phonograph, like graphing tables, water column tables, okay, of what they experience, they share with us, right? So I have what I call an open mic, which is an open cosmic level receiver. So I don't shut anybody out, okay, obviously, because it means that God wants to listen to everything that's going on from all of you, right? Because they're all his children, his and her children. It's not a gender thing. It's an eternal love vibration. It's an eternal sun. That's why the beauty of being androgynous, which means it's like being a mated chip. Boy and girl become one. They don't ever want to be separated. So everything I am, she is. Everything she is, I am. See how that works? That's one blast furnace. That's the eternal spirit of fire. That's what it is. So that's a spark. That's God's spark. That's God's children. Sparks. Sparks is communication. So God runs a communication system. Okay? And communicates as an open mic, which is an open receiver. The neural receivers. So we're getting the message. Now we communicate as messengers, as God messengers, right? To let other folks know what's going on. But they're not listening. And how come they can't hear us? Because they're not on the same wavelength. Their radio antenna does not pick it up. Is that what's right? That's right. They don't feel like we do. They have no idea how deeply an eternal God feels. How much that God cries every time one of God's children loses one electron. Because God will experience the loss of an electron in you that I experience in me. And I shed tears when I experience that in another. That's knowing a one from the other. I'm not supposed to be losing any energy. Something is feeding on eternity. because it's holding electrons captive. That's called control. Lack of control. That's called lack of what? A line of communication to experience the primal sound and light field. Now it's chasing electrons. That means that any source from which it can pull that is running electrons becomes a target. Because now it needs that electron. Instead of giving electrons, it's using electrons to become what? More powerful. Because its perception of power, of electrical power, is inverted. So the mind is inverted. When the mind is inverted, it will build something that will naturally collapse. It's just a matter of time. Because it was not built right. So that's why they come to God's messengers, which are God's guardians, to say, hey, we hate you. We don't like you. Okay? Because you experience what love is, and we don't have any feelings. We don't experience what love is, so we don't do any harm, but we do harm to ourselves by the harm we do to others. So God has ultimate eternal forgiveness because God's love is always on. So you know that God is going to help you because God wants to heal you, right? So that you're not ever experiencing any harm that they're doing to themselves, that God experiences in me that causes me to cry. And the use of that energy, what we experience therein. So now you have the guy at California Insider interviewing this lady who apparently recently retired from the California State Senate. And even though she didn't say so directly, she talked about what they call size of the aisle, right? Size of the magnet. You know, left or right, right or left, right? Boy, girl, girl, boy. Negative magnetic polarity, positive magnetic polarity, Democrats, Republicans, and how all that works. And saying, well, you know, everything, they used to have a supermajority, right? Of everything they wanted to push through. And remember, everything that they do, they get paid. And how do they get paid? Us. So they push a bill, because that's what it's called, push. Push the bill, which is be ill. Now they're going to charge you for what they do, which is like delegating authority. You can speak for me, because my microphone doesn't work. That's essentially what the message is. Now, this other individual could be on a completely different journey. Could be somebody from some other star system that you don't even know, who's not even from your own world. And the next thing you know, they get up on a soapbox and they say, hey, listen, I'm very aware of what's going on here, and I know how to fix it. So if you give me your money, guess what? I'll use your money to fix it, because I know how to fix it. And they keep kicking that can down the road year after year after year. And instead of experiencing problems being solved, they keep getting worse. Now, what does that inform you of? Okay. The end of history. Right? So, in a larger context, it means that they're planet killers, universe killers. All you have to do is look at the oxygen levels on the planet. That alone tells you what's going on. Right? Breathers, trees, all the trees on the planet. And so that's why the quarantine was in effect. Okay? What do you do with something like that in a universe? Right? Particularly when eternal love is the law. And so here this lady from the state senate of California was talking about how they were trying to correct problems. You know, that for instance, she's basically telling you how fucked up the system is. Not like we don't know. Okay, but she's like an insider because she was a state senator. So that means she went to work every day working with other minds, right? The group think process of how these minds that are connected to each other, right? In their little cubicles, what they do every day with their energy, right? Collaborating with each other. What it is that they're going to use their energy to do, and what is their function? Generating rules, which are rule-based functions on how computers communicate with each other. So what she was saying here is that all the folks that are on the Democratic side, they all work together, even though they might not like what somebody else is going to produce as a bill, they'll vote for it anyway because they realize that if I produce something and I want them to vote on it, then I better vote on what they want. Oh, man. Oh, shit. We're fucked now. So in other words, it's sort of like if you ever saw the book or read the book or ever listened to some of the videos, I don't even know if they're still up anymore, by not just the guy who used to be the LA director of the FBI. I forget his name. I believe they poisoned him. And I believe that, what's his name, the guy who was a sergeant who worked narcotics for Los Angeles Police Department, who was there inside that building when an interview was taking place with the guy who was the head of CIA, Deutsch, with Maxine Waters, who happens to be a House rep that covers Compton. And what I know about that place, related to my experiences with the CIA and the military, and all the drug distribution, how trauma relates to central nervous system, how trauma and sexual energy, and how all of those energies are all tied into a whole, right? Which means every source of energy from which it can be sucked, right, is up for grabs. So they naturally want the most powerful energies. And what is that? Phosphorus. The false phosphorus ignition of a male that's going to deliver the seed packet, which is visual information mathematics, to a girl's lab. Okay. The primal sound and light field, when they're together, joined as one to experience being the eternal spirit of fire, they don't experience that. So they build systems that don't last, that are meant to break, because their mind is broken. They don't experience being one. Which means they're holding on to electrons. And the reason for that is because they're not willing to let go of control over energy, which is control over consciousness. Because that's what energy is. That's what an electron is. The smallest units of energy is consciousness. The energy that runs the universe. They want to hold it captive. So you know that's not a real God. Because a real true God is an eternal God that is accelerating, generating electrons, the primal light and sound field forever, which is eternal love that goes on forever. Which means nothing ever gets held captive. It's actually impossible. Because you've chosen, your soul has chosen to serve forever on behalf of the one true God, which is eternal God. And when you're willing to let go of every electron, so there is no mistaking what it is that you know that you are, it happens. You light yourself on fire. And when you light yourself on fire, that's the spirit of fire. That's the most powerful spirit of fire, because now you're in service mode. Now you shut the door behind you. Now there is no mistaking in knowing your true identity. That means there's no mistaking what you know, who the true eternal God is. That you serve, that I serve, on behalf of all creation. Now you're one. I try and keep this as simple as I possibly can and leave all the periphery, all the other larger historical stuff. I'm like a 4-year-old little kid. I'm letting you know what it is that I am. I'm connected to an eternal, true God that experiences what love is that goes on forever. That's what I am. What else would you like to know? And then we can go from there, because that's what it began with. That's the highest state of awareness. So now you can get into all the past, the present, and the future. In many ways, the past doesn't matter anymore, does it? Because it's gone. The future's not here yet because all you got is right now, which is eternity. That's stealth code speed. That's pre-made fatter consciousness. Because we're not held captive in time or space. That's how it works. That's what it means to log in and out and go wherever you want to go. No restrictions. And know why there's no restrictions? No resistors. No memories, no batteries required. That's a powerful sun. That's a powerful God. That's eternal, unconditional love that's on fire. The gift, love energy, so that everything that is created is experiencing what love is. I know what it's like to experience a realm like that, a planet like that, and worlds like that, because that's where I come from. That's why we're here. In a matter of speaking, we're the folks that built the first one. Networked it, built the tree trunk, right? The first design. So that it works perfectly as designed. And then it was just like when I was a child. Yeah, but you know how it is. They want to come in there and they're always wanting to, as I used to say as a little kid, fuck with Mother Nature. That's right. And so, you know how that goes. You know the rest of the story, the end of history, and the rebirth of a goddess. That's what it is. Thank you for having spent your life in the journey that you took, Terence McKenna, with the folks that you associated with, you know, and managed to be able to have such a beautiful relationship with Mama and the planet, and learn the things that you did and share what it is that you communicated with others about what it means when we talk about the end of history and the rebirth of a goddess. The higher octave. The songs. Anyway, have a good night. I love you all. Be good to yourselves. I knew I forgot something. The punchline of the interview with this gentleman who was with the lady who was a state senator, was essentially the same message that we've known, at least since I've been here, is that they won't, as she put it, what they came to realize, and because she's an insider having worked in the state Senate for a number of years, that they refuse to take responsibility for what they find out later, that what they did in the past caused things to get really messed up. And now that everything got messed up because of the way that their minds operate, they don't want to take responsibility for it. And what you begin to realize by the way that I've map-readed the consciousness field since I was a little boy, and the videos that I put up about what I've experienced, and then I share through those communications what I've experienced it, right? When we get into mental illness, self-destructive behavior, self-suicide behavior, right? And in some ways, I can remember, particularly as a child and a teenager, being in classrooms, for example, where one child did something really bad, like pulled a stunt, right? And the teacher didn't know who it was that did it. So then would have the whole classroom lined up and tell every child, somebody amongst all of you did something that needs to be punished and take account, responsible for what they did because they broke a rule. They're not obeying the programming. Did something out of line of communication. So whoever that is, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to come forward and admit what you did. And if you don't, anybody else out of this group of children are all going to get punished. Which means you're going to get punished anyway. But here's the kicker. Everyone's going to get punished just like you, even though they know they didn't do it. Right? See how that goes with adults? So they don't want to take responsibility or accountability for the decisions that they make. Okay? So that would be just like the MK Ultra stuff. You killed that guy down there. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did. What it means is it doesn't matter how much evidence you try to present. You could even show them on video camera. They refuse to admit it. They will never admit to the truth, ever. It's actually impossible for them to do that because they don't recognize anything as having been done wrong because they don't know the difference, which means it's like they can do whatever they want, and whatever they did that you said was not right to do, they don't know that, and they're never going to know that. What do you do with that? Okay, I can remember a guy who was on film that did that. Remember him and when he was being interviewed? I think he happened to be the president of the United States. Bill Clinton. And what did he say? That famous statement? Well, it depends on what you say is. What do you mean by is? That's like somebody who painted themselves in a corner and is still looking for another out. And here's the kicker on that. Do you realize one of the other modalities that's involved in the impact of that has on another being who's sane is to drive you insane? Because they realize that there's not anything you can do with something like that when it's in your midst. You either accept it for what it is, as being something possible that can exist because you're experiencing it. Now we're back to the illusion, knowing one from the other. That isn't possible. That's what I was thinking when I was a kid. This isn't possible. But what it really is saying is nothing can be that sick. Now we're into repairables. A repairable mind, a repairable unit of energy that is consciousness, that has the capacity to experience what love is and heal. Because that's eternity. So it's not like they didn't know that's what it started with, and that's what it will always be, because you can't ever put that fire out. It's the difference between going from the beginning until the end, which is always going to be there, which means there is no end. Okay? So what we're talking about is how long is it going to take for the repair to take place? How do you repair something like that? That is a non-repairable. The mind is non-repairable. Now we're into body snatchers and technology and the way that artificial intelligence allows for the extension of life. Artificial life. But it will always need a source of eternal energy to run on because it's always finite when it's artificial. So now you can get into what we call shelf lives, versions, and timelines. Versions of androids, right? Versions of Blade Runners, versions of super soldiers, right? So you can see what's happening here with California. It's a psychopath or a sick mind that does not have an off switch. So it's going to be interesting to see how, because it's not obviously in California, is it? You can measure that in every city council, every mayor's office, every county council, every county supervisor's office, every state legislature, and of course, the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the executive branch. It's like there's no secret why they named it 3 branches, right? Branch directories. All the rule-based functions got to follow the rules. So this is going to get interesting here, particularly now as things are heating up. And I'll keep you posted on what it is that I'm experiencing as another reporter from the field, another messenger, another one of God's messengers. Have a good night.